The management has to create those different work environments. You know, what are you doing when you're at home, and what does that day look like? What are you doing when you're here in the office, so that it's maximizing the value of their attendance in the office, which is great. But there is also, as you said, from a manager's perspective, managing people differently then when they're at home versus when they're in the office. And in the case of a hybrid work environment, now as a manager, we have to do both. And so can you maybe talk a little bit about that? What advice can we give somebody? So what is the difference in managing somebody remotely versus managing them in an office environment? And how do you kind of balance both when you do have a hybrid environment?
Well, the first thing I would say is everybody's hybrid is different, right? So some people's hybrid is some people come in, some don't, or people aren't always there on the same day. Like if you're a leader leading a hybrid team and you're only in certain days of the week, and everybody in your organization is in certain days of the week, you've got to be really careful if you're not in on the same days as some of your team, because then what you have is proximity bias. Like the people that you do see on the days you happen to be in are at a disadvantage or an advantage, depending on how you look at it. And it might be both, right? Because that's who I see to put on a project. That's who so there's all sorts of things. So you've got to be very clear about proximity bias. Like I'm going to grab you because you're here, Sam, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got to be careful about that kind of thing. I want to go back to something else though, that you said earlier, which is it's the manager's job to help think this through about what we do when we're in the office and when we're not, to which I would say there's an awful lot of leaders say, man, that's hard. Like, I don't know the answers to that. To which I would say everyone in your organization should help figure that out. So in other words, the leader's job should be to say, listen, we're going to be hybrid. So we're going to be in some of the time. So we together need to figure out what's going to be different when we're here and when we're not. What are the expectations about communication and the tools that we use when we're here and when we're not? What are our expectations about all of that? And so I don't have to have all the answers as the leader. I have to ask the questions, and I need to engage in that, but I don't have to know all of it because none of us have done it before. So we should be figuring it out together. And it's one of the ways that we bring the team back together, much like at the start of the pandemic when we brought the team together, not physically, to figure out how to make it work. And we did figure out how to make it work, right? So now it's like, why we don't have to put all the pressure on ourselves to have all those answers and bring the team together in that regard. That would be a huge piece of this. Now, back to finishing this, giving you a little more on this really big question of how do we lead differently, in or out. The thing I would say is we have to be more intentional, because if I have to make sure that I'm interacting with my team members who aren't here in ways similar to the ways for those who I am seeing face to face. And so we have to think more about interaction with our team and not just transaction with our team. Right. So when we were all separate, we were all apart, and it was all transactional, right? What do you need? How do you need it? Here's my question. Here's your answer. Boom, boom, boom. Thanks. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, Sam, that we as leaders have to make sure that we're interacting with our team members, that we're talking about more than just the work and the weather, that we're continuing to build our relationships with them, our credibility with them, our trust with them. And that's only going to happen if we're intentional about it, not just on the days we're in, but on the days that we or they are out as well. So one of the things that I've done for years is to say that one of the things on my list every single day is what I call the 5. And that means that every day I have the goal of having 5 interactions with members of our team, which is roughly a third of our team. Like, in other words, I need to make sure that I'm interacting with them and staying connected to them, not just talking about the work. Now, it may be because we're talking about work that we do a little more than that, but we have to stay connected. And as leaders, we have to take the lead in doing that.